Ma'am, is my screen and audio is clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, thank you for the wonderful opportunity to the MS Swaminathan Research Foundation. So, to deliver and speak in the MSSRF Centenary 100 webinar series. So, and thanks for the nice introduction on my profile. So, it is a privilege to be a part of a platform that has consistently emphasized the link between science, society, and sustainability. So today's presentation is focused on community-based coastal climate solutions. So it's specifically through the harnessing blue carbon from mangrove, seagrass, and seaweeds. When climate mitigation is discussed, the conversation usually begins and ends with the terrestrial forest. However, some of the most efficient and long-term carbon sinks are actually found at the land-sea interface. Once again, mangroves, seagrass meadows, and seaweeds occupy less than 1% of the ocean area, yet they sequester carbon at rates far higher than most land ecosystem. So, beyond carbon, these ecosystem provides shoreline protection, fishery support, and direct livelihood benefits to the coastal communities. So, this makes blue carbon not just a climate solution, but a development and resilience strategy for the coastal communities. So, in many parts of India, coastal communities are already managing. So, they are restoring and depending on these ecosystem, often without calling it climate action. So, in the next slides, I'll highlight how science, policy, and local knowledge can come together to strengthen these nature based solutions. So, briefly touch upon global perspective and discuss the science behind blue carbon while grounding the discussion in the Indian context and how community participation can strengthen the coastal climate action. So, is my slide visible?
Yes, sir. Clear.
Okay. So, and let me talk about the blue carbon. So, blue carbon can be a important ecosystems in the coastal areas, particularly the ecosystems stores the carbon before that capturing as well as storing the carbon into the coastal and marine areas. So these work led by the important ecosystem called mangrove ecosystems, salty marshes, seagrass meadows, and importantly in the marine macroalgae, especially brown macroalgae in the under the marine waters. So they called as kelp forest. So these ecosystems are powerful carbon sinks. Sink means storing and burying the carbon captured from the atmosphere and from the uptake from the surface of the ocean and burying under the marine floor. So these important ecosystem can store carbon faster than the terrestrial ecosystem, likely 3 to 10 percentage faster per unit area compared to the terrestrial ecosystem. So if you compare between the terrestrial and blue carbon stocks, 2000 to 3000 gigaton carbon, that is 10 power 9 tons of carbon. So they can be stored by terrestrial ecosystems, whereas blue carbon, especially marine ecosystem like corals, mangroves, salt marsh, seagrass, meadows, so they can store up to 600 to 800 gigatons. In this report by IPCC 2019 and MacLeod et al. 2011, so these comparison were given for the potential of carbon storage ability. If you compare that terrestrial as well as marine ecosystems, so terrestrial can be the large area compared to the blue carbon ecosystem, whereas blue carbon has 10 times faster than the terrestrial ecosystem. And this blue carbon term is coined by Christian Nelliman in his book in 2009. So, who termed the word blue carbon in his book titled The Role of Healthy Oceans in Binding Carbon. So let us see about the global carbon storage potential. So if you see that 185 million hectares of blue carbon ecosystem sprawl across the globe. So this global carbon, especially organic carbon held in living seagrass biomass, is 2.52 megagram carbon per hectare. So these carbon, two-thirds buried as roots and rhizomes in the ground. So as per the Indian research, so Kaladharan et al. Has more delved into the carbon, especially blue carbon assessments. So followed by Mr. Stankovic, Murugan et al. So and recently we can see the Chanda et al. 2022. So who report how much of blue carbon reports available in India. Very countable number of blue carbon reports available in India. So you can see that blue carbon measurement is very low compared to the other countries. So if you find especially the research aspects of Indian blue carbon ecosystem, so we formulated that survey of literatures. So from the 2000, 1900 to current situation, we noted that the blue carbon sequestration potential overall the Indian coast. So around uh, 3 to 57.15 megagram carbon and below ground carbon stocks from 5.0 to 68.18 megagram carbon has the inputs in Indian ecosystem. And moreover, the blue carbon ecosystem face many threats like human activities, like urbanization in the development of coastal areas, agriculture, so aquaculture activities, infrastructure developments, and you can see the pollution and chemical plastic pollution, especially microplastics and oil spills, agricultural runoff, the river runoff, and many habitat destruction, especially deforestation and land conversion and the sea walls development in some coastal area, which can also lead to the threat to blue carbon ecosystems. So not of that, soil erosion and abundance of invasive species are also reason for a threat to blue carbon ecosystem. So among these, the climate change threat is more effective to the blue carbon ecosystems. So, especially sea level rise, changes in temperature, extreme weather events. This makes blue carbons very low in particular ecosystems. So, can let us see some of the global climate change and impacts. So, what are the other climate change impacts in the ocean? Is my screen visible, ma'am? Is my screen visible?
The title is visible Global Climate Change and Impacts.
Okay,
Below that, it is white.
okay,
Now,
okay, okay. So
yeah,
especially,
now
yes,
it is. Hmm.
okay, thank you. So especially the global climate change is causing many kind of threats. So one of the major impact of global climate change is ocean acidification. So you can many of you can listen about ocean acidification phenomena in research papers and conferences. So leading research scientists. But the concept of ocean acidification is new, but the research of the background knowledge is very old. So especially you can see that 1970, you can see many research papers on ocean acidification. So but how this ocean acidification is impacted to the blue carbon threads. So that is the concept we can understand from the concept of carbon dioxide emissions. So we can see that excess carbon dioxide, massive level of carbon dioxide is going to the atmosphere, and it not only reaches to the atmosphere and ocean depletion, but it also come back to the seawater, and it makes the seawater uh, more concentration of CO2. When the CO2 mixture into the seawater, the series of chemical reaction happens. So the chemical reaction, you can see that when carbon dioxide mix into the CO2, so the water, seawater H2O and CO2 is reacting and leads to the formation of carbonic acid. And this carbonic acid is not a stable form, which is unstable, and which leads to the formation of H plus ions and HCO3, that is bicarbonate. So this series of chemical reaction will make two twin phenomena. So one is H plus ion increasing, and another one is depletion of carbonate due to increase of bicarbonate ions. So what happens at the end? You can see that many shelled organisms in the ocean that requires carbonate skeleton to form that for their shell building purposes. So their metabolism will take CO2 in high level. So, when it reacts with the H plus, the shell deformation happens. And another formation, the deformation of shell due to uh, non-availability of carbonate ions. So this process is ocean acidification. When you see this animation, when the industrial level of carbon dioxide emitting into the atmosphere, it will reach to the ocean day by day. You can see day by day the tons and tons of carbon dioxide enter into the ocean, which is uh, stored into the under the marine water, and the benthic organism, they are not uh, they are sessile, and they are trapped due to this ocean acidification phenomena. And you can see that the concentration of carbonate depletion will cause the formation of aragonite saturation state also deplete. So you can compare the pre-industrial era into the current scenarios. The scenarios, you can see that aragonite saturation is the calcium carbonate formation. So when this calcium carbonate depletion happens, the aragonite will deplete. If the aragonite depletes, the coral reefs cannot build their shell. So due to this phenomena, the many kind of coral accretion will be stopped. So the coral accretion is also called coral growth. If the aragonite saturation level depletes, the coral calcification is also depleting. So they are positive relationship. And not only this affect the seawater shelled organism, it affects the entire biota. So if you see the food chain, that not only the shelled organism, the non-shelled organisms like fishes also affected. So this is our laboratory oriented research conducted in 2019. So we conducted the research of ocean acidification effects due to high carbon dioxide emission. So we simulated the experiments in the lab conditions, and we see that the animals shell corrosion. So you can see the damage of shells due to the massive mixture of CO2 in the laboratory simulative conditions. So also you can see the developmental process, the gonad, the section of histopathology section of gonads, seen that the lesions you can found throughout that gonads. And we also seen in the another marine biota, sea urchin, when it found that ocean acidification phenomena when experiments to the low pH, that ocean acidification happens, that if the pH 8.2 normal pH, when it mixture of carbon dioxide, it will become 8.0. And if you add more CO2, it will become 7.8. So if you have the series of scenarios like the IPCC prediction scenario of 2100, the pH will come to 7.8. So Based on the scenario, we done the research work on that CO2 induced ocean acidification effects on marine biota. So you can see that SEM images, so and gonad tissues histopathology. So that low pH can cause leading to disruption of cells as well as lesions in the gonad tissues. And if you come to the ocean acidification phenomena, this climate change relevant to ocean acidification is many research led by countries, developed countries, but in India, only few research has been taken place. And in the case of our UNESCO recognized heritage site, Gulf of Mannar, if you see that there are biodiversity rich regions, you can see that mangroves, seagrass, and coral reef ecosystems. So they are rich in biodiversity. So in the same place in Gulf of Mannar, you can find over 4,223 species in the area of Gulf of Mannar. So where there are numerous reports available for pollution, climate change impacts like ocean warming and ocean acidification also is nowadays reported. So you can find that uh, many biodiversity is affecting in the region of Mandabam group of island. When we surveyed in the last decade, we found many coral, uh, dead corals. We found throughout the Mandabam group of islands. So we assessed that aragonite saturation, which is the health monitoring system for ocean acidification process. Um, so we found the aragonite levels using that series of calculations. So we cannot directly measure the aragonite saturation state. So if you measure the ocean health, you have to measure the state of aragonite saturation. So for making the aragonite saturation should be the optimal conditions. So, say for example, more than 4 is the optimum level for coral health. So, the aragonite saturation level can vary. So, for this health monitoring assessment for blue carbon mapping, so the we found many physicochemical properties, biological properties that plankton assessment, chlorophylls. So we done the field survey over the Gulf of Mannar and Parkway regions. So 24 stations we analyzed. So and what we knew that the aragonite saturation state. So the depletions you can find the aragonite saturation in Gulf of Mannar was recorded at marginal level. So that is 2.64 is the very marginal level. So in many countries you can found that Atlantic Ocean and so they reported more than 4, 5 and some regions 6. But our regions also, that Parkway region also have the optimal level 6.71 aragonite saturation state. But in the Gulf of Mannar, many sites reported less than 3. So, which is alarming conditions for the threat for blue carbon ecosystems. Okay. And what we found in that research is below the value of 2.64, even if it is the above undersaturation threshold. So we found that skeleton and shells would not be optimal, and it could stress the organisms for the vulnerabilities of shell formation and the calcification process. So if you see the chart for the categorizing the saturation state of aragonite, we can segregate these categories. So extremely low condition is zero point 0.5 to 1. So the low is 1 to 2.5. The marginal is 2.5 to 3.5. Adequate is 3.5 to 4.5. Optimal is more than 4.5 for biogenic calcification. You can find the nature's research paper on Orr et al. 2005. And other research papers, so the faster coral accretion was observed in increased aragonite saturation state. And if you found the overall aragonite saturation state and health monitoring assessment, uh, y- you should not um, accept that mangrove, seagrass, and some seaweed ecosystems. So if you see that uh, in the Gulf of Nar and Pak Bay, many regions we report good carbon potentials. But in several regions in the Gulf of Nar, we can find the degraded mangrove areas. So you know that mangroves are a good fish feeding ground. So they are called as fish nursery ground. So it can help to protect our shorelines, and it can make carbon sequestration, and preventing erosions. So if we found that overall the Karangadu region in the Park Bay, you can found that mangrove swamp areas. So they are not in healthy condition. In some of the parts, you can find the pollutions. So pollutions means household pollutions, and um, you can see the seesaw dust, that is a plankton called phytoplankton called trichodesmium. So if you see the uh, overload of pollution in the monsoon season, you can find that trichodesmium blooms heavy throughout Tundi and Karangadu coast of Park Bay regions. So in the aspect of blue carbon mapping and its strengthening. So we assess the mangrove carbon stocks over the Gulf of Mannar and Park Bay regions. So these are the regions in the Chinnapalam. So where we found that assessment of mangrove area, which is very small region. So the region is called Chinnapalam near the Paman area. So where mangrove is occupied within the 93 hectares. So where we assess the carbon stock potential. So that the carbon stock potential more than an chest level of trees. So we can found the carbon stock assessments. So and subsequently using the allometric equation, we can found the total biomass of different mangrove trees. So species wise, the allometric equation varies. So especially there are two dominant species in that Gulf of Mars Chinnapalam mangrove ecosystem. One is Avicennia marina, and second one is Rhizobora mucronata. So their carbon stocks, we found that per hectare 21.2 to 23.5 hectares. So based on the different trees, and some are degraded, and some are healthy. So we continuously monitor this ecosystem. And another type of blue carbon ecosystem is seagrass carbon stock assessment. So our research in that particular region called Park Base Munaikadu. So where we found that uh, healthy ecosystem of seagrass. So we found that seagrass cover assessment, and subsequently we measure the biomass, that species distribution, and we found that the region's carbon storage potential is very much higher range. So recently we published the research paper on seagrass carbon stock assessment with using the aragonite saturation state. So these two things are new to assess in this area. So the aragonite saturation gives the information for health in the coral reefs, um, seagrass and mangrove ecosystem. And particularly vice versa, we can able to check that seagrass health condition using that aragonite saturation state. So what we study during past 2 years, So we found the carbon stock assessment in different stations. So we monitored 10 different stations, and we found out that the carbon stocks cover density, above ground biomass, below ground biomass, and the organic carbon and the sediment organic carbon. Then finally, the carbon stock and the sequestration potential. So we found that when the seagrass level is abundant in a few stations, so the aragonite saturation level is very high. So that tells about the ecosystem, and especially in the ongoing research in carbon mapping in seaweed ecosystems. So when we found in the Gulf of Mannar, there are huge raft based seaweed farming is ongoing. So especially if you see that from the Palman Bridge towards that coast of Gulf of Mannar, you can found there are two different systems. One is the culture of native seagrass species, sorry, seaweed species, and wild collections. So the tons and tons of wild collection of seaweed is ongoing in that Gulf of Mannar. In Park Bay, especially Kappa Figus is culturing. So, if you found that seaweed is located in throughout the Indian coast, so that seaweed in several research paper you can found that seaweed will not be completely considerable as a blue carbon. So because they lack true roots, and it depend on the rocks or sediments to attach and grow. But uh, it is inevitable to include that their contribution of carbon stocks, carbon capture from the ocean. If you found in the ocean, it will in the kelp forest you can found more amount of carbon storage as a biomass as well as sediment traps. So seaweed improvement of seaweed is very much possible in upcoming the developments in India. If you find that in global and indigenous production, so only 0.01 percentage of seaweeds you can found compared to global conditions. So India only can produce 5,300 wet weight in tons, and you can found several culture of species and economically viable species we are producing. But compared to the global level, many developing countries have the technologies to develop the seaweeds in cultural aspects. So as part from our lab, so we also developing some of the strategies to found more number of seaweeds. So we are culturing in our sea conditions, but there are some limitation. But in the conditions of optimal levels of seasons wise, so we saw that the good production of seaweed in our coastal areas, and the technology transfer. We found a tie-up with many industries, and developing seaweed culture abilities. So we are doing continuous efforts on transferring these skills to the farmers. So the fisher folks, so they also learned to develop the culture of seaweeds. So and also we monitor the ecosystem services of these blue carbon areas. So especially from fishermen and the authorities. So we found that ecosystem services of these blue carbon areas. What we measured that. So, what are the services this ecosystem can provide? Especially mangrove is there, and the seagrass, seaweeds is there. So, what kind of support can it give to the fishermen, seaweed farmers, and local peoples who are directly involved in the trading of seaweed and so on? So we monitor that ecosystem services using that uh, several strategies. So one of that is uh, questionnaire survey. So in this questionnaire survey, we assess the socio-economic status of uh, importance. So we also gone through the survey with the authorities, so wildlife wardens and scientists from institutions, research institutions. So we know that the socio-economic status in Gulf of Mannar and Park Bay regions. So using this evidence, uh, we can develop the strategies, climate change mitigation strategies, not only from the researcher, not only from the fishermen. So if we combine both, so synergistic effect, if you put the effort forward, so we can develop the climate change mitigation strategies for our blue carbon ecosystems. So especially, so we face many different kind of threats. So from that part, what we learned, we have to conserve and restore many degraded ecosystem. So how we can promote these kind of fishermen and uh, um, stakeholders development in this Gulf of Mannar and Parkway. So there are several steps we have to move forward to the policy level, but the lack of research in the blue carbon potential is limiting. So that is why, so we have to found the blue carbon research in India. We have to strengthen the uh, our research monitoring techniques. So recently we found that carbon stock assessment in Gulf of Mannar and Park Bay regions using the analysis of moment structure modeling. So which is the same model using the regression strategy. So we found that the relationship between the aragonite and the carbon stock efficiency. So we found that aragonite level should be maintained properly in that coastal regions. So and also to strengthen the research, so identifying the recent research, and uh, we can we can add on to that today's situations. So this is the current requirement for taking the blue carbon mapping and bringing that strategy to the stakeholders of beneficiaries like fishermen, folks, farmers, etc. So, from this, we currently need the baseline assessment of blue carbon sources, which we lack in that our regions. So, uh, besides, we have to assess the aragonite saturation state as the baseline survey. So, we are continually monitoring the seawater carbonate parameters and modeling the aragonite distributions so that we can define the health of our ecosystems in different ways. And finally, what we stress that identification of blue carbon hotspot is very much essential. So because wherever the many institutions, many funding agencies, and several NGOs are starting that fishbone like kind of mangrove initiation, mangrove plantation, seagrass restorations, and many things are going. But um, before that, we have to make the development of good strategy of knowledge of high carbon sequestration potential. So this can be through the dissemination of mitigation strategy through publications and social awareness. That is what we are doing. So, thank you for engaging this lecture by our participants. So, I have to acknowledge to my professor, Dr. Answer, for providing the opportunity to work under his project to this next level research. And I thank for the financial support from NCCR and for the research permission. We are grateful to Chief Wildlife Warden. So, thank you, everyone.
Session is open for discussion.
So, Uh, Dr. Selvana himself has asked a question through the chat box. Is there variation between aragonite value in sargassum and kelp species? Yes, yes. Actually, it's a good question. So, aragonite value in sargassum and kelp species. So, actually, this aragonite value is not species specific. Throughout many research, we found that aragonite values depend on how carbon dioxide massive mixtures and its chemical reactions. So variation between aragonite value in species-wise differentiation is not dealt in the recent studies. So, but this is a good question. This is advancement for next level research. For species wise, we didn't find in seaweeds. So in seagrass, in recent our publications, we found that Cymodocea cerulates, cerulata and rotundata, we found minor differences in arachnids. Thank you for the question. And another questions, Dr. Selvan, I am sir asking, what are possible ways to improve aragonite value along the coastline with the fisher community and academicians? Yes. So, yeah. So this is actually the um, solution based question. Actually, nowadays restoration ability of seagrass mangroves is taken place by many industries, NGOs and institutions. So the aragonite value, so restoration is one of the possibility. And in developed countries, so they use reverse strategies. So the calcium carbonate, uh, the calcium carbonate mixing into the seawater, that can add the aragonite value. So, but that is in a laboratory scale, but not possible to the wide region. So restoration is one of the best possibilities to improve the aragonite values.
Participants, if you have any other clarification, kindly please ask. So, if there is no more question, we'll wind up the session.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for the opportunity. Shall
Yes,
I
sir.
shall I end
So,
the session?
on behalf of MS Swaminathan Research Foundation, I would like to express our sincere gratitude to Dr. K. Rangesh for delivering an insightful and thought provoking lecture on community based coastal climate solution, harnessing blue carbon from mangroves, seagrass, and seaweed. Sir, your comprehensive presentation clearly highlighted the importance of blue carbon ecosystem and the vital role of community participation in addressing climate change and enhancing coastal resilience. And also, we extend our heartfelt thanks to the organizer of MS 100 webinar series for continuously creating meaningful platforms that honor the legacy of Professor Dr. MS Swaminathan and promoting knowledge sharing in fisheries and coastal resource management. And also, I would like to thank all the participants for their active involvement and valuable presence, which gratefully contributed to the success of this session. Once again, I thanking you all for joining us today. Thanking you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Shall I close the session?
Yes, sir.
The recording has stopped.